If you've been trying to make sense of the real estate market lately, you're not alone. Between headlines, interest rate talk, and wildly different opinions online, it can feel hard to know what actually happened in 2025 and what really matters going into 2026. So, in this video, I want to do two things. First, I'm going to clearly recap what actually happened in our local market in the Hampton Roads area in 2025 using real numbers, not headlines. And second, I'll walk through what many economists and housing analysts are expecting for 2026 and how I think buyers and sellers should be thinking about the year ahead. No hype, no predictions meant to scare you, just context, clarity, and perspective. Hi, I'm Carrie Tanner, realtor with At Coastal Realty. Let's start with 2025. When most people look back at the 2025 market, the word I hear most is confusing. Prices were up, but affordability was tight. Homes were still selling, but not like the frenzy years. And buyers and sellers both felt hesitant at different points. But when we look at the data, 2025 actually tells a pretty clear story. In 2025, our median sales price ended the year at $355,000. That represents about a 4.5% increase compared to the year before. So, despite higher interest rates and affordability challenges, prices didn't collapse and they didn't skyrocket either. What we really saw was steady, modest appreciation. Closed sales for the year came in just over 21,000 homes. That number was slightly higher than 2024, but still well below the highs we saw earlier in the decade. That's important because it tells us that demand didn't disappear, it normalized. Buyers were still buying, sellers were still selling, but both sides were more cautious and more intentional. Another key shift in 2025 was how long homes took to sell. The median days on market increased to 19 days. Now, that may not sound like much, but compared to the ultra-fast markets of recent years, it's a meaningful change. Homes were no longer selling instantly just because they hit the market. Pricing mattered, condition mattered, and strategy mattered once again. We also saw list price to sales price ratios settle right around 99.8%. That tells us something very important. Most homes were selling very close to their asking price, not tens of thousands over and not drastically under either. 2025 wasn't a buyer-dominated market or a seller-dominated market. It was a market that demanded realism on both sides. Inventory increased compared to prior years, and new listings for the year came in just under 30,000. Inventory is still not what we'd call high by historical standards, but it was enough to give buyers more choice and breathing room. And that shift alone changed buyer behavior significantly. Buyers in 2025 were more patient. They were more analytical, and they were less willing to overpay just to win a house. From a big picture perspective, 2025 wasn't a boom year and it wasn't a crash year. It was a recalibration year. A year where the market slowed down, steadied itself, and began moving toward balance. And that sets the stage for 2026. But before we talk about what economists are projecting next, we also need to talk about something that's clearly on a lot of people's mind: federal policy. Specifically, how President Trump's housing-related policies could influence the market moving forward. Anytime there's a change in administration, there's a tendency to expect immediate dramatic shifts, but housing doesn't work that way. So let's break this down calmly and realistically, using what has already happened, what's actively in progress, and what is still just being discussed. First, let's talk about what has already been implemented. One of the most direct actions taken has been the federal government's direction for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to significantly increase purchases of mortgage-backed securities. The purpose of this move is straightforward: to put downward pressure on mortgage rates. And we did see a modest short-term impact, with rates easing slightly as a result. However, most economists agree that this type of policy helps at the margins. It does not return us to ultra-low rates, and it doesn't override broader forces like inflation and treasury yields. In other words, it can help stabilize rates, but it doesn't fundamentally reset affordability. Now, let's talk about policies that are in the process of being proposed or drafted. One of the most discussed ideas is allowing buyers to access retirement accounts like 401ks for down payments without penalty. On the surface, this sounds like it helps affordability, but in practice, it mainly increases purchasing power without increasing housing supply. That can push prices higher, especially in competitive price ranges, and it tends to benefit higher income households more than entry-level buyers. So it's a policy that could help some individuals, but it doesn't solve the underlying supply issue. Another proposal that gets a lot of attention is limiting or banning large institutional investors from buying single-family homes. While this resonates emotionally, the reality is that institutional investors own a relatively small share of the overall housing market. Most economists see this as largely symbolic, with limited real-world impact on pricing or availability. More meaningful but much slower are efforts aimed at the supply side. The administration has rolled back certain environmental review requirements and discussed incentives for zoning reform and development. Those changes could reduce costs and speed up new construction over time, but housing supply moves slowly. Even effective supply-side policies take years, not months, to meaningfully impact inventory. Now, we also have to talk about indirect policies because these often matter just as much. Two big ones are labor and material costs. Stricter immigration enforcement reduces the available construction workforce. Construction already faces labor shortages, and when labor becomes more scarce, building costs go up. At the same time, tariffs on materials like lumber, steel, and manufactured components increase the cost of building new homes, which in turn increases purchasing price. Those costs don't disappear, they get passed along in pricing. So while some policies aim to improve affordability, others unintentionally push construction costs higher, which works in the opposite direction. This is why economists describe the current policy environment as pulling the housing market in two directions at one time. Some actions support demand and rate stability, others constrain supply and increase costs. So, how does all of this connect back to what we're seeing in the market and what's expected for 2026? Taken together, these policies reinforce a market that continues to normalize rather than swing sharply. They support modest price growth, gradual inventory improvements, and a slower, more stable pace overall. What they do not point to is a sudden affordability breakthrough or a dramatic market shift. Housing fundamentals still matter most. Supply takes time, rates respond to broader economic forces, and real estate still moves at the pace of people's lives, not political headlines. Which brings us back to the outlook for 2026. Most analysts expect home sales to increase modestly. Mortgage rates are expected to stabilize in the low to mid 6% range. Price growth is projected to stay in the 1 to 3% range nationally, and inventory should continue improving gradually, especially as homeowners decide to move despite having lower rates locked in from prior years. Affordability remains a challenge, but wage growth has begun to outpace price growth, a sign of a healthier market. Demographics will continue to shape demand, with baby boomers remaining active, first-time buyers slowly re-entering, and more single-buyer households influencing pricing and inventory patterns. So, what does all of this actually mean if you're thinking about buying or selling in 2026? Well, for buyers, this is a market that rewards preparation, patience, and clarity. You're likely to have more options and more negotiating room, but only if your expectations align with reality. For sellers, homes that are priced correctly and prepared well still sell. But strategy matters more than momentum. And waiting for a perfect market often creates more risk than clarity. Markets don't announce ideal moments, they reward informed decisions made with context. If I had to summarize 2025 in one sentence, it would be this: the market slowed down enough for clarity to return. And if I had to summarize 2026 in one sentence, it would be this: the market continues moving towards balance, gradually, imperfectly, and without drama. No crash, no boom, just a market that rewards thoughtful, informed choices. My goal with updates like this is always the same: to help you feel more grounded, more informed, and less reactive to noise. If you have questions or need help navigating through the waters of the real estate market, give me a call or shoot me a message. All of my contact details are listed below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.